Hey everybody, this is Chef Bates and welcome back. Today we are going to be reviewing Chapter 7, The Flow of Food. We're going to be talking specifically about service. This chapter is mainly concerned with holding food, either holding it hot or holding it cold. In order for most of what's coming to make any sense at all, we need to define some terms and come to grips with how prepared food gets from the kitchen to your plate. Now there are two ways food is prepared in restaurants, either cooked to order or cooked and hot held until served. Cooked to order food is just what it sounds like, food that is made by a chef when it's ordered. On the other hand, cooked and hot held food is prepared in advance. At that point, it's either held on a hot line and hot holding equipment and portioned when someone orders it, or it's placed on a buffet steam table and customers scoop out what they want themselves. All restaurants, even those without buffets, hot hold some foods until it's ordered. Checkers hot holds French fries. Chipotle hot holds refried beans and queso. Olive Garden hot holds pasta sauces and soup. The list goes on pretty much forever. There are also two basic ways customers get their food in traditional restaurants. Now, we're not talking about fast food or quick casual restaurants here, but traditional restaurants. Food is either served by waiters or customers serve themselves at self-serve buffets like Golden Corral. Because a self-serve buffet contains food that is either being held hot or held cold, ServSafe refers to these two types of food as hot held or cold held food. There are also two basic ways hot food is served at a self-serve buffet. The first is by using a steam table, an electronic piece of equipment that keeps food hot by warming water under pans of food and creating steam. Then the steam heats the pans. This is the kind of equipment you see at every Golden Corral and all-you-can-eat buffet in America. The amount of steam produced, and therefore the amount of heat that's produced, is controlled electronically. When you are serving food this way, ServSafe calls it hot holding with temperature control. On the other hand, you can keep food hot by using chafing dishes like these. These keep food hot through the use of small canisters of fuel, which are positioned under pans of water and set on fire. The flaming fuel heats the water, and the hot water keeps pans of food hot. Since there's no way to control the amount of heat being produced by the flame, ServSafe calls this style of service hot holding without temperature control. Occasionally, there's no way to serve food either with or without temperature control. Maybe the client just wants platters of food put out for guests to choose from. Maybe there's no source of electricity, or maybe the food just wouldn't do well in either hot holding or cold holding equipment. In this case, the only way you have to keep food safe is to carefully monitor the amount of time it is in the temperature danger zone. No matter how you are serving food, you must understand that items that are being held for service are at risk for time temperature abuse and cross-contamination. If your operation holds food for any reason or in any of these ways, you must create and institute policies that reduce these risks. So focus on time and temperature control, but don't forget about protecting food from contamination, because stuff still falls in food. The first step to serving food safely is to create SOPs, standard operating procedures, and policies. You'll need to answer two basic questions about everything you plan to do with hot-held or cold-held food, how long you will keep serving hot-held food, and when you will throw it away. For example, your policy may let you refill the same pan of roast beef in a buffet all day, as long as you throw all of it out at the end of the day. At a self-serve buffet, you must take steps to protect food from contaminants that might fall in. Covers, like the one over the soup in this photo, help maintain a food's internal temperature as well as keep bits of other food from falling in. You should also install sneeze guards over all food that customers serve themselves. ServSafe requires you to know how far above and beyond food the sneeze guard is. So here it is. A sneeze guard must be 14 inches above the food, and it must extend 7 inches out from the food. This is going to keep your delightful customers from dripping their gross bodily fluids into your mashed potatoes. No matter how you are holding your food, with or without temperature control, in chafing dishes, a steam table, a refrigerated display, it doesn't matter. You have to keep food out of the temperature danger zone. That is, you must keep hot food at 135 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, and cold food at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower. Use a thermometer to check food's internal temperature. Don't use the temperature gauge on a hot holding or cold holding unit to do that. The gauge on the outside of a steam table or refrigerated display does not check the internal temperature of the food itself. It measures the temperature of the unit, not the food it's holding. So don't trust that little digital readout. It's lying to you. While checking temperatures, remember to use your thermometer at least every 4 hours, or throw out cold food that is not at 41 degrees or lower, or hot food that is 135 degrees or higher. When you're checking the temperatures of the food like this person in the picture is doing, remember to use your thermometer to check those temperatures, and you have to do it every 4 hours. If the food isn't hot enough, it's not over 135 degrees Fahrenheit, or it's not cold enough, it's not underneath 41 degrees Fahrenheit, you got to throw it out. Smart restaurateurs check the temperature of their buffet food more frequently, at least every 2 hours. That way, if they discover a problem, they can take corrective action. For example, a pan of mashed potatoes is found to be under 135 degrees Fahrenheit during a temperature check. The taters can be taken off the buffet, reheated to their minimum internal temperature through, reconditioning, then placed back in the hot holding unit. If you only check every 4 hours and discover there's a problem, you're going to have to throw away those delicious mashed potatoes. You don't know how long it was sitting at that temperature. Steam tables are not designed to cook food. Just like a refrigerator is not designed to make hot foods cold, but rather keep cold foods cold. A steam table is designed to keep hot foods hot. Don't use hot holding equipment to reheat food. Never, ever. Most hot holding equipment does not pass food through the temperature danger zone nearly fast enough. Reheat food correctly, then move it over to your hot holding unit. As we have said earlier, and your operation may occasionally need to display or hold TCS food without temperature control. Here are some examples of when food might be held without temperature control. When you're displaying food for a short period of time, such as an off-site catered event like that picture. When electricity is not available to power hot holding or cold holding equipment. But keep in mind, if you serve a high-risk population, you cannot hold TCS food without temperature control, regardless of how careful you are. Now, you can hold cold food without temperature control for up to 6 hours if you meet some conditions. The food was at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower when it was removed from refrigeration. The food was labeled with the time you removed it from refrigeration and the time you must throw it out. The discard time on the label must be 6 hours from the time you removed the food from the refrigeration, as you see in that picture. For example, if you remove potato salad from refrigeration at 3 o'clock p.m. to serve at a picnic, the discard time on the label should be 9 o'clock p.m. That's 6 hours from the time you took it out of the fridge. You have to make sure the food temperature does not ever exceed 70 degrees Fahrenheit while it's being served. And if it does, throw it out. Speaking of throwing food out, you have 6 hours. At the end of 6 hours, everything gets thrown in the trash. There are some slightly different rules that apply to holding hot food without temperature control. That food must have reached 135 degrees Fahrenheit or higher before removing it from your temperature-controlled hot holding unit. In other words, your oven. It needs to be labeled with the time you removed it from temperature control and when it must be thrown out. The discard time on the label must be 4 hours from the time you removed the food from temperature control. And just like with cold food served without temperature control, you must sell, serve, or throw out the food within a set amount of time. For hot food, it's 4 hours. Now, make sure you remember these two numbers. Cold food has to be thrown out after 6 hours without temperature control, and hot food has to be thrown out after only 4 hours. The biggest threat to food that is ready to be served is contamination. Your kitchen and service staff must know how to serve food in ways that keep it safe. Dining rooms, self-service areas, off-site locations, and vending machines all have specific guidelines that staff must follow. You need to train your kitchen staff to avoid touching food with their bare hands and instead wear single-use gloves whenever they're handling ready-to-eat food. As an alternative, food can be handled with spatulas, tongs, deli sheets, or other utensils. You do not need to wear gloves when touching food with tools like tongs or a spatula. However, the tool must be clean and sanitized appropriately, and the food handler obviously must have washed their hands, because you knew that. Keep in mind from Chapter 5 that there are some situations where it's acceptable to handle ready-to-eat food with bare hands, but you'll need to check with your health inspector before permitting your food handlers to touch food with their bare hands in any circumstances, because your health inspector might say, "Not here, baby. No, you're not going to be carrying those. No, put on some gloves." I don't know why I don't know why any of that just happened. Whenever working with or serving ready-to-eat foods, you have to use tools and equipment properly. Make sure your staff use separate utensils for each food item. Train them to clean and sanitize their tools after each serving task. For example, if a line cook is using some tongs to place turkey on plates at a banquet line, don't let that employee turn around and use the same tongs to serve bread rolls. If utensils are used continuously, for example, they're left in containers of salad dressing for customers to serve themselves, you're going to need to clean and sanitize them at least once every 4 hours. In most cases, the easiest and safest way to store utensils is by leaving them in the food with the handle extended beyond the container. If you are serving a non-TCS food item like baked goods, you can place your tongs on a clean and sanitized food contact surface. For example, many desserts are served at room temperature and do not need time and temperature control for safety. In these cases, serving utensils may be placed on a clean and sanitized food contact surface like a plate or other display platter. The only exception to this rule is spoons or scoops used to serve food like ice cream or mashed potatoes. Those kinds of scoops can be stored under running water or a heated container of water that is maintained at a temperature of at least 135 degrees Fahrenheit, which is warm. Some restaurants in some areas of the country have begun allowing customers to bring refillable and reusable take-home containers brought back by a guest. These zero-waste containers are good for the environment and create much less trash. Reusable take-home containers can be refilled if they meet the following conditions. They were designed to be reused. They were provided to the guests by the operation. They were sold or given to the customer by the restaurant specifically for reuse in that restaurant, and that they are cleaned and sanitized correctly. Take-home beverage containers can also be refilled as long as the beverage is not a TCS food and will be refilled for the guest who brought it. In other words, Starbucks can't take one customer's to-go cup, refill it with a drink for a different customer. They're not allowed to, rotate cups. The beverage that goes into the cup must be for the person who brought it. The container must also meet these conditions. It has to be able to be effectively cleaned. That the container has to be rinsed with fresh hot water under pressure right before they refill it, and the container has to be refilled by staff in the operation or by the guest using a process that prevents contamination. Service staff must be as careful as kitchen staff. They can contaminate food simply by handling the food contact areas of glasses, dishes, and utensils. Service staff should use the following guidelines when serving food. Servers must hold dishes at the bottom or edge. Hold glasses by the middle, the bottom, or the stem. Do not touch the food contact areas of dishes or glassware. They should carry glasses in a rack or on a tray to avoid touching food contact surfaces. Don't stack glasses. It might look cool, but it's stupid. Make sure your waiters hold flatware by the handle. Do not hold flatware by food contact surfaces. Store flatware so that servers grasp the handles, not where the person's going to stick it in their mouth, because once again, that's disgusting. Avoid bare hand contact with food that is ready to eat. Obviously. Whoever is grabbing a bagel with their fingers should have their hand chopped right the heck off. Seriously. And you already know how I feel about ice. Use ice scoops or tongs to get ice. Never scoop ice with your bare hands or glass. The glass might chip or break, and your fingers might be covered with gross, greasy norovirus germs. Ew. Many higher-end restaurants preset their tables with silverware, with glassware, and with plates. If your operation presets tableware on dining tables, you must take steps to prevent it from being contaminated. If your operation presets silverware on dining tables, you might choose to wrap or cover items like you see in the picture. Table settings do not need to be wrapped or covered if extra or unused settings meet a couple of requirements. They are removed when the guests are seated, or if they remain on the table, they are treated just like they're dirty. They're cleaned and sanitized once the guests have left. Service and kitchen staff should also know the rules about reserving food that was previously served to another guest. It should be obvious, right? It should be obvious. We shouldn't have to even talk about this, but unfortunately, there are some real dummies out there, so here goes. If someone doesn't eat all of their food, you can't give a different guest their leftovers. So, just to be clear, do not reserve food returned by one guest to another guest. Gross. See that salsa? This server picked up a basket of partially eaten nachos and is recycling the salsa from one customer to another. This is disgusting. Don't reserve an open ramekin of mayonnaise or ketchup, even if the person who originally got it didn't touch it. Never, ever reserve uncovered condiments. Do not combine leftover condiments with fresh ones, again, like the guy with the salsa's doing. And you should throw away open portions or dishes of condiments after serving them to guests. Salsa, butter, mayonnaise, ketchup. Ugh, that's all. Those are examples of things that you might be tempted to reserve because the person didn't touch it. But no, don't ever do that. That's terrible, terrible, terrible. You must protect condiments from contamination. Serve them in their original containers or in containers designed to prevent contamination. Offering condiments in individual packets or portions can also help keep them safe, like, these guys. You would think this never happens. You would be wrong. Do not reserve uneaten bread to guests. And you should change the linen that are used in bread baskets after each guest. Never reserve plate garnishes such as fruit or pickles to another guest. Throw out served but unused garnishes. Like that peppercini that Olive Garden puts on their salads and that no one really ever eats. Don't take it from one table's dirty salad bowl and pop it into a fresh salad that's going to a different set of guests. That would be wrong. I mean, a little bit funny, sure, but still wrong. Wrong. Typically, raw unpackaged meat, poultry, and seafood cannot be offered for self-service. However, there are two exceptions. Mongolian barbecues, where customers pick the raw items they would like stir-fried together from a cold holding unit, and then one of the restaurant employees cooks it on the spot, and Chinese buffets, which serve sushi or raw shellfish alongside other RTE hot-held foods, such as sweet and sour chicken or egg rolls. In both cases, they can serve raw food that guests will pick. All-you-can-eat buffets mean one thing: multiple trips back to the buffet to try something new. When guests are going back for seconds or thirds or whatever, don't let them shovel food back onto a dirty plate or use dirty utensils at the self-service area. Pathogens such as norovirus can easily be transferred by reused plates and reused utensils. You should assign a staff member to monitor those guys. They need watching. And post signs that remind guests, don't reuse plates and utensils, you nasty, nasty monster. Here are a couple more things you can do to prevent cross-contamination in self-serve areas. Stock food displays with the correct utensils for dispensing food. This might include tongs, ladles, or deli sheets. Change out utensils and tools every 4 hours and replace them with clean and sanitized ones. And as you remember from the last chapter, ice used to keep food or beverages cold should never be used as an ingredient. Ever, ever, ever. Restaurants order bulk food that comes in extra large packaging, frequently without labels and in huge quantities. If you are providing bulk food in a self-service area like that Cinnamon Toast Crunch, which is now in a dispenser, ready to be gobbled up by 8-year-olds, it needs to be labeled. The label must be in plain view of the guest. And when labeling food, you can include the manufacturer or the processor if they provided a label. As an alternative, you can provide the same information using a card or a sign. Basically, the customer has to know what they are pouring into their bowl or putting on their plate, even if it seems obvious to you. Bulk and unpackaged food, such as bakery products and unpackaged food portioned for customers, does not need to be labeled if it meets a couple of conditions. Condition 1, the product doesn't make a claim regarding health or nutrient content. So here's an example. You got a big old bowl of raisins for people to sprinkle on their oatmeal. You don't have to label the raisins. Bulk raisins don't come with a nutritional label. Condition number 2, there are no laws requiring labeling. You don't have to label apples as apples. There is no law that says a restaurant needs to point out to a customer that what they are about to eat is a banana. Condition number 3, the food is manufactured or prepared on the premises. You don't have to label a platter of biscuits if you were the people who made the biscuits. Condition number 4, the food is manufactured or prepared at another food operation or processing plant that's owned by the same company. The operation must be regulated. For example, Olive Garden doesn't have to offer information about their breadsticks. They're made by Darden, the company which owns Olive Garden. Off-site service is just a fancy way to talk about catering. When catering an event which is not happening at your restaurant but is instead happening some distance away, there are a whole new set of challenges that you have to understand in order to pass the ServSafe exam. Delays from the point of preparation to the point of service increase the risk that food will be exposed to contamination or time temperature abuse. If it takes you a long time to get the food to where it's going hot, you could easily end up with food in the temperature danger zone. To transport food and items correctly, follow these procedures. Pack food in insulated food containers. Use only food-grade containers, such as those that are shown in the picture. They should be designed so food can't mix, leak, or spill. Once you arrive at the service site, use appropriate containers or equipment to hold food at the correct temperature. Also, you should label food with a use-by date and time. Make sure you include on the label reheating and service instructions for staff. And don't forget that a dirty van results in dirty, contaminated equipment. So make sure the inside of your delivery vehicle is spotless. And of course, check temperatures frequently at all points in the process of getting food from where you cooked it to where you're going to serve it. If you discover that your food is not staying hot enough, you may need to invest in more effective catering equipment or turn down jobs which are too far away for you to safely transport the food in the time that is allotted. Before accepting a catering job, make sure the location has the correct utilities. Safe, potable water for cooking, dishwashing, and hand washing. And if they don't, you're going to have to provide a mobile location for these facilities. And garbage containers that are stored away from food prep, storage, and serving areas. If they don't have proper garbage containers available, plan to bring your own. When catering, it is important to plan to transport and store raw meat, poultry, and seafood separately from ready-to-eat items. For example, purchase a separate cooler to transport and hold raw chicken away from ready-to-eat salads. You don't want to put both of those in the same cooler. The last thing we're going to address in this chapter on service is vended food. Vending machines don't just serve sodas and candy, they also sell food, like this vending machine in the Orlando International Airport. ServSafe is very interested in TCS and RTE foods, which are sold in automatic vending machines. If your facility prepares and packages food for vending machines, treat that food with the same care as you would other food served to guests. Vending operators should protect food from contamination and time temperature abuse during transport, delivery, and service. To keep vended food safe, follow these guidelines. Check product shelf life daily. Products often have a code date, such as an expiration or use-by date, like the one in this photo. If the date has expired, throw out the food immediately. In fact, you should throw out all the refrigerated food that you made on site if it is not sold within 7 days of preparation. Keep TCS foods at the correct temperature. It should be held at 41 degrees Fahrenheit or lower, or 135 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Your vending machine has to have a control that prevents TCS food from being dispensed if the temperature stays in the danger zone for more than 2 hours. That kind of food has got to be thrown away. The food has to be dispensed in its original container. And one last little note, wash and wrap fresh fruit with edible peels before putting it in the machine. Because, somebody's going to eat that thing, and they're not going to wash it first. So, wash it and wrap it, my friends. And that's it. That's chapter 7. I told you it was an easy chapter. We're more than halfway through with just a few easy chapters left. So, till next time, this is Chef Bates. See you in the kitchen.